early architecture in the later Middle Ages, but I think the basic core of it is late 13th century. And it's a very high quality building. You see the wall when you go around this way. We must be along for the Kuro drivers, so yeah. But, well, I wish that everybody else is here.
Oh, it's quite a nice.
Yes. Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? Not the back of the river, of course. There's a lot of debate over this building. Some people want it to be late medieval, because there was a revival of 12th and 13th century work, a limited revival in the later Middle Ages. But I'm reasonably confident that it is actually late 13th century work. And you might be able to see that what we've got is very high quality work for about 3/4 of the length of the building, and then it tails off into something much less adventurous. And I think what we've got here is the church that was started for the Knights Templars. This was their main preceptory in Scotland, and I think this is really a rather imposing church that was started for them. Whether they actually finished it, we don't know, but it later became, although the property passed to the Knights Hospitallers, there's no evidence that they really took an interest in it. And in the later Middle Ages, it became a parish church. And I think what you've got there is where it was sort of truncated, basically, and just sort of squared off with a little bit at the end. And that's why you've got, you see here, you've got really beautiful. What sort of masonry is this? What sort of masonry? Ashlar, yes, yeah. It's ashlar masonry. Very good square, coarse masonry. Whereas there, what we've got really sort of coarse rubble rather than ashlar. And you'll see, when you look into a building, always look at certainly medieval buildings, always look at the ground first, because obviously they had to start at ground level. And you can see the changes in the base courses or plinth courses going around. I always have difficulty with the idea of plinth courses, ever since somebody asked me what a plinth is, and I tried to explain it, and they said, no, it's the blether of a plinth. And it sort of slightly devalued the idea of what a plinth might be. But we go inside and you've got one or two nice bits and pieces.
The gravestone with the skull and the...
Sorry?
People used to be very cool.
Oh, I see what you mean. No,
Doorways are quite little.
Temple Church. And it was the main church. Well, this is where the principal preceptory of the Knights Templars in Scotland was. And as I was saying, some people have argued it's late medieval, but I don't think it is. Yes, but I think this was only the chancel of a much larger church. And that's why you can see there's a change in the masonry at the west end. And I think that's the quotation of the church. But you can see it's been very finely appointed. It's had a sedilia there. Do you know what the sedilia were? It's where the priest and his assistant sat at certain points of the celebration of the Mass. Their seats. Sometimes you have 2 seats, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. The usual thing is 3 for the priest, the deacon and the subdeacon. Here it's presumably celebrant and clerk. Here you've got probably a tomb recess in the north wall, but then tomb recesses in north walls are always rather important. Does anybody know what, in that position, a tomb recess might also be used for?
Sacristy?
Sorry?
How do you say it in English? Where they keep the wine and bread.
Oh, the sacristy. Well, there was a sacristy probably on the outside of the building. No, it's probably used as an Easter sepulchre or tomb of Christ. Anybody know what that is?
I don't know, I'm thinking reliquary, but I'm not sure if I'm right.
In a sense. But as part of the Easter rituals, a consecrated host and an image of Christ, perhaps a crucifix or something, was ritually entombed between Good Friday and Easter Sunday. And it's known as the Tomb of Christ or Easter Sepulchre. And so tombs in that position were very favoured places because they would also double up as being, a tomb of Christ. And then over on the other side, just there, anybody know what we've got just there? Sorry? Well, it might just have been. It might have been an Aumbry, which comes from the French armoire cupboard, and it certainly has at one stage had a door frame round it. But there are other remains of what looks like a drain there. So, anybody know what that makes it more likely that it is? A piscina. And no, it's not a loo. And whenever you try and type piscina into your computer, it will always come up with the French word piscine rather than piscina. But a piscina was the place where the sacred vessels and celebrants' hands were washed at the celebration of the Mass. So, you know, we've obviously had a very high quality church here. We've only got what was probably originally the presbytery and the choir of the first church, as I say, probably truncated. But you've also got other interesting things. Well, they interest me, they may not interest you. You see, we've got these narrow windows here. Unlike, think away that window there, which is a later insertion. But these narrow windows here are quite interesting, and you might be able to see a little pocket in the wall just there. Do we have any budding liturgicologists or ecclesiologists amongst us? So what do you, anybody have any thoughts what could have been here? Well, in the windows, stained glass, almost certainly, yeah. But when you have a small window like this, and when it's associated with a slot hole in the wall like that, it's possible that this is where the screen, the timber screen, that subdivided the church, the choir and the presbytery from the rest of the building. So I think the screens come across here, and you quite often have smaller windows in front of the screens, which lit the altars, which were in front of the screens. And I suspect there may well have been originally another piscina in the window recess just there. So, you know, again, they're all pointers to this having been a pretty fine church. And if you want to read about it, there's the most wonderful account of it in, I can't remember what page, but it's a book called The Architecture of the Scottish Medieval Church, 1200 to 1560, available from all good booksellers at £50. Written by a very fine author. I can't recommend his works highly enough. And you know, if you all want to get first-class marks, you go out and buy a copy of it. All right. Anyway, we better put the driver out who's missing. It's been really good for him to bring.